we are here today because Chris Hemsworth, your lead actor, showed you this script. How many times has that happened that an actor has brought the script to you and not the other way around?
Well, occasionally it happens and it doesn't lead to a movie. But Russell Crowe actually brought me Cinderella Man. And that was, he wanted to play James Braddock and introduced me to that story. And this was a situation where we had finished up Rush. We were in post-production, and I'd had a really good experience with Chris on Rush, and was impressed by, his approach to the character, it was a great script by Peter Morgan, but he kept mining it and delving, into the character, and I felt there was a creative ambition there that was exciting.
I mean, looking at your resume of films, there's a handful of actors that you have worked with so memorably several times, whether it's Michael Keaton or Russell Crowe or Tom Hanks. When do you know, when you're working with someone for the first time, that it's someone you're going to want to work with again really soon? Is it within the first couple meetings? Is it once you're on set for a couple days? Or is it further down the production after it's been a while?
Well, there are so many actors that I've worked that I would love to work with again. Not only those guys and Chris, but Paul Bettany, who I've worked with again, or Jennifer Connelly I worked with more than once. But so many, Cate Blanchett, and the list goes on and on. Paul Giamatti. I mean, there are so many. I get along with most actors, and I enjoy the rapport, so I'm rarely disappointed, and in almost every instance, 99% of the people that I've worked with, I would jump at a chance to work with again, because I'm pretty careful in the casting, and as I said, I've rarely been disappointed. But some actors, particularly lead actors, they exude. It's kind of an X factor. It's not only what they can bring to the role. It's not only their work ethic and their attitude around it, but it's also they become a kind of a good collaborator, and that's why I sometimes refer to them as an X factor. And they'll they have ideas that elevate everything around the project, and they know how to work with the director, so it's not intrusive in any way. It's just additive.
So take me back to the moment where you've decided for sure that this is going to be the film that you're going to take on next. When you have something that is the scale and scope of something like this, I mean, maybe Apollo 13 rivals it as far as just how much you're biting off. What's the first phone call you make? What's the first department head that you sit down with to try to figure out what's the first bite that you take?
Well, in this case, it was visual effects, because I had dealt with virtually every challenge that I knew I was going to have to face in this movie. I'd experienced some iteration of it at some point, maybe on a smaller scale, maybe a sequence, not an entire movie, but whether it was the water, above the water, under the water, the fire, mechanics in a tank, that sort of thing. And of course, I've been around CGI, most of my career, but this is the first time there would be a character. And so I went to Jody Johnson, who had been the VFX supervisor for Double Negative on Rush, and we had a lot of real Formula One cars in Rush, and we had a few replicas that we built, but even I could no longer look at the screen and tell you how many CGI cars we had added in to flesh out the field, and they were so authentic. Jody had achieved that, and he'd achieved that very efficiently, cost-effectively, creatively. And I went to him and I said, well, I've seen Life of Pi, I've seen the latest Planet of the Apes. I have a feeling this is possible. What's entailed? Can we ever, afford it? Look how much there is to be done. And so that was the first, and he assured me that we could. I mean, after really analyzing it, and did a great job. One interesting thing that I'd never experienced. We storyboarded, we did animatics. They weren't. There wasn't much finish on those animatics because I didn't want to invest the money in that. But the sequences were built around these things. I went out into the water or the tank or wherever it was taking place, shot everything, edited them together using the storyboards and the animatics, and had a pretty good sense of what it was, how the scene was flowing, feeling pretty good about it. But when we started to get the final whale shots in, there was just something a little off, not about the scenes, and we actually had to go back and re-edit because suddenly there was a real character. And it just changed the rhythms, and it changed. We needed to modify some of the reactions of the actors. Things were different. It was a recut because now we actually had a whale.
Does it give you peace of mind? My understanding is that the Life of Pi first AD was the first AD here. Will you get me that guy, whoever he is? I've never met him before, but I need him.
Well, I'd worked with him over a period of 20 years, so it was. He'd been my first AD on a number of movies already, and had done that one in between pictures, and so it was a great coincidence. Not only did he have that tank experience, he didn't have very much experience out on the real water, and for budgetary reasons, and also for the authenticity, I wanted to shoot as much as we could in the actual ocean. I knew it would save us money. But moreover, I felt like that, authenticity was a watchword for me on this, and I wanted the actors to have that connection with the environment. I wanted us to be forced into that. I wanted us to have to shoot with the sort of immediacy and intimacy that would force us to do. And he was pretty leery about that, but the budget kind of forced us into it anyway, but it was fine. We wound up doing only scenes that had involved stunts on anything dangerous. We used the tank. Everything else, the Canary Islands.
That seems really counterintuitive to me. I would think that it'd be cheaper to film in an enclosed tank instead of out on the open ocean. Is it because you're just not paying a location fee? I mean, what's the reason that it's cheaper to film in the real ocean?
CGI plates, just filling in the backgrounds, and it just if you suddenly you're into hundreds and hundreds of more shots, and so sometimes that's a valid trade-off because it's difficult to control the weather and the timing and so forth. But I just kind of pledged to shoot this in a very naturalistic sort of almost docu style in a way, and we had contingency plan upon contingency plan, and the actors were really prepared within the time frame because we were shooting in sequence so that they could lose the weight and following the storyline, but within that, the actors understood that we would shift according to the weather. In order to keep shooting, and so if they had to move out of one emotional scene and into another one, because the light had changed significantly or the weather had, we would do that. We didn't have to do too much of it, but in a number of occasions we did, and they were unbelievable. They were ready to roll with it.
I would imagine that in casting a movie like this, where the demands are so physically strenuous for your actors, that you're looking at not only their skill and are they right for each part, but do they have the mettle? Do they have what's inside to be a good teammate for you and to handle all of this? How did you know in meeting with actors, what questions did you ask them to ensure that they would be right for it and right for the demands once you were filming it?
Well, you can't know, for certain. I did know Chris would have it. I mean, you wouldn't know it, but he had to lose a lot of weight for. If you think about it, he had to lose a lot of weight just to be James Hunt, just to be able to get in an F1 car from Thor side.
From Thor, yeah.
And he had done that, and also that movie was done very quickly. Difficult conditions. The weather wasn't always with us, and he just had a tremendous attitude about it. So I knew that would be there. You're meeting the actors, and you say it, you confront it. You say, here's going to be the expectation. You can imagine how difficult that's going to be. you know, there's going to be physical training, there's going to be diet, there's, you know, and it's not going to be pleasant, and you know, you sort of bring it up once, you reinforce it with the agent, you mention it one more time before you know, on a phone call back before you cast them, and then in rehearsal, when a few of them start to drift, you say, "Remember that conversation we had? I meant that," and so, you know, I did have to be a little firm early on, but people fell into it, and you know, I think there's an added advantage when actors are playing real characters, because you know they wanted to respect the memory of the people they were playing, even if they're just, you know, thumbnail sketches of who the men were. And when I would ask them or mention to them or acknowledge just how much they were suffering to try to get this right, and I appreciated it, they would say, "Well, it's just, you know, it's just a fraction of what the guy that I was playing had gone through." So, and they, you know, they just wanted to approach it with integrity and offer that to audiences.